I was lounging in my hammock, deep in the middle of a murder mystery, where the butler had just almost gotten away with it, when the whole world decided to vibrate. At first, I thought it was an earthquake, or maybe my coffee had finally developed sentience and was making a break for it. But no, this was man-made madness. Heavy machinery right outside my cabin. I sprinted out in my flip-flops, still clutching my paperback like a weapon, only to find a bulldozer in my driveway and a demolition crew taking selfies next to my chimney. Directing them like some kind of suburban Napoleon was Barbara Wilson, president of the Lakeside Estates HOA and apparently the queen of bulldozers. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Didn't you read the notice? This structure violates HOA standards. It's coming down today." I blinked, then smirked. "That's interesting," I said, "seeing as this cabin existed before your HOA was even a concept on a cocktail napkin." She waved a piece of paper like it was a holy relic and said, "Doesn't matter. We have the authority." That's when I let it drop. I wonder how your board would feel if they knew I hold the deed to that shiny new lakeside clubhouse you're building. And just like that, the color drained from her face faster than HOA fines drain a bank account. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. Now, before you think I'm just some smug property squatter with a flair for sarcasm, let me take you back. My name's Mike Peterson. I'm 35, a software engineer by trade, and the sole heir to one rustic, slightly slanted, absolutely magical piece of family history, my grandfather's lakeside cabin. He built it with his own hands in the 1960 S's, back when things were made to last and men wore plaid unironically. It had cedar siding weathered to the kind of silver that makes architects weep, and a stone chimney that had survived more storms than the town council. This wasn't just a cabin, it was memory carved into lumber. My summers were spent here, barefoot and mosquito-bitten, fishing off the dock while Grandpa Richard told stories about war, whiskey, and women who could shoot straighter than him. When he passed, he left me the cabin in his will, along with a handwritten note that said, "Keep it standing longer than I did. Challenge accepted." Now, this place wasn't in bad shape, but she had age, like an old dog that still wants to chase squirrels, but needs a little help off the porch. I started fixing her up, one board at a time. No contractors, no fancy upgrades, just me, a toolkit, and YouTube tutorials. I replaced rotting wood, patched the roof, added flower boxes Grandpa would have rolled his eyes at. I was careful, respectful. I didn't want to modernize her. I wanted to preserve her, like history you can nap in. That's when the HOA showed up. A letter arrived one day, printed on paper so thick it probably cost a small tree its life. "Violation notice," it read. "Structure does not meet aesthetic standards." I laughed, crumpled it, and used it to light the fireplace. My land wasn't part of any HOA. I knew this because I had eyes, a brain, and the original deed signed in cursive, back when signatures meant something. But the letters didn't stop. They escalated like a bad relationship, from suggestions to warnings to full-blown threats. "Final notice. Daily fines will be imposed. Structure may be subject to removal." I almost sent them back with glitter just to make a point. Then, on a sunny Saturday, Barbara Wilson arrived like a pastel storm cloud with 2 backup Karens in tow. She looked at my cabin the way a vegan looks at a bacon cheeseburger, equal parts disgust and superiority. "Mr. Peterson," she said, like my name had personally offended her, "this structure violates numerous community standards." She gestured to my flower boxes like they were radioactive. I took a slow sip of coffee and told her what I'd been itching to say. "Ma'am, this property isn't part of your HOA. It's been here since your subdivision was still a dirt road," but she had a map. Oh, she loved that map, showing new HOA boundary lines that magically swallowed my land whole. I called my Uncle Sam that afternoon. Retired lawyer, handled my grandfather's estate, wore suspenders unironically, and could quote zoning law like it was scripture. I told him what happened. He didn't even hesitate. Bring me everything. Deeds, notices, that ridiculous map. We're going to court." And just like that, the game began. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about saving an old building. This was about legacy, about one man's right to protect what his family built against a fake-perilled tyrant who thought clipboards equaled power. They wanted me to roll over. I was about to roll up sleeves, because if Barbara thought I'd give in, she didn't know me, and she definitely didn't know what my grandfather left behind. Uncle Sam wasn't the kind of guy to waste a crisis. By the time I pulled into his driveway, he already had a legal pad in hand and reading glasses on the tip of his nose, looking like Justice in flannel. He took one look at the deed, the violation letters, and Barbara's crayon-scribbled map and said the words every beleaguered grandson wants to hear. "This smells like hot garbage wrapped in legal malpractice." He pointed to a line on the HOS boundary sketch. "This isn't zoning, this is a turf grab with a side of arrogance." We didn't waste time. Sam grabbed his briefcase like it was a sword and said, "We're going to the courthouse." Now, I hadn't stepped inside the county records office since I got my first fishing license. But there we were, two Petersons on a mission, armed with paper and righteous anger. Inside, we were greeted by none other than Tom Jenkins, the clerk of all things old and paper-based. Tom had played offensive line with me in high school. Big guy, buzz cut, smelled like peppermint gum and coffee filters. "Mike Peterson, in the flesh. Haven't seen you since the homecoming game disaster of '07. What can I help with?" I explained the situation. He let out a low whistle, leaned back in his chair and cracked his knuckles, like we'd just asked him to solve a murder. Let's dig. What followed was a crash course in bureaucratic archaeology. Tom rolled out ancient plat maps, tax records, and microfilm scans like they were relics from the Ark of the Covenant. And buried beneath decades of dust and bad filing systems, we found gold. Or rather, clarity. "Look here," Tom said, tapping the deed like it owed him rent. "Richard Peterson, 1982. Sold 80% of his land but retained full rights to parcels 6, 7, and 8. Sam leaned in, brow furrowed. "Plot 6 is the cabin, right?" "Yup," Tom said. "And 7 and 8? I asked, already feeling the hairs rise on my neck. Tom turned slowly. "That would be the HOA clubhouse and their lakefront pool." I blinked. Sam chuckled. Tom sat back and rubbed his temple. "Mike, buddy, that HOA built their temple of conformity on your family's land." I leaned against the counter, suddenly dizzy. "Are you saying I own their pool?" "Unless Barbara Wilson can channel ghosts, yeah. And based on these signatures, I'd say your granddad knew exactly what he was doing." It felt like a cartoon moment where the villain realizes the treasure they were hunting had been sitting under the hero's floorboards all along. My cabin, my lake, and now their precious spa retreat? It was like realizing the dragon built its hoard on your grandma's doily. We copied every relevant document, every survey, every notarized whisper of truth, and packed it into a manila folder that felt heavier than justice ought to. As we walked out of the records office, the world felt tilted, like I wasn't just defending a house anymore, I was holding a detonator. Back at Sam's place, we laid out everything across the table like a crime scene. The original deed wasn't just a shield, it was a sword. My grandfather had planned this. He didn't just leave me a cabin, he left me leverage. The kind of leverage you use when the world stops playing fair. Sam looked at the boundary lines and smirked. Richard Peterson played the long game, knew the developers would come sniffing around one day. I thought back to summers spent hammering nails alongside him, learning how to swing a hammer and a lesson at the same time. Anyway, said the land was the most valuable thing he owned, and the only thing no one could take from him, unless you let them. And here I was, staring at the blueprint for a war I hadn't started, but damn sure planned to finish. I never wanted to be that guy. The loud one. The one filing lawsuits and picking fights. I wanted to fish, fix some shingles, maybe write a mobile app. But some legacies don't whisper. They demand a voice, and Barbara, she was about to hear mine. Before we left, Tom pulled me aside. His voice dropped an octave. "Look, man, I probably shouldn't say this, But Barbara's not just some HOA queen with a clipboard fetish. Her husband used to sit on the town council. She's got friends in zoning, permitting, probably the courthouse janitor, too. I nodded. We noticed. Word is, he continued, they fast-tracked a bunch of approvals last year. Clubhouse remodels, dock expansions, even a helicopter pad proposal. And I'm not saying she's got the judge in her purse, but let's just say, don't be shocked if things move suspiciously fast on her side. The room felt smaller. It wasn't just one HOA drunk on power. It was a whole system, greased with mutual favors and golf club deals. This wasn't going to be a simple property dispute. This was corruption wrapped in courtesy, papered over with official seals and coffee-stained agendas. But I had something better than influence. I had documents. And a grandfather who'd spent his final years quietly placing chess pieces for a match he knew I'd one day have to play. I walked out of that office heavier but sharper. The lines were drawn. I had my legal ammo. Now it was time to see what Barbara and her clipboard mafia really had planned and why they were so desperate to make my cabin disappear. Because something told me, under all their smug smiles and HOA bylaws, they weren't just trying to kick out a stubborn neighbor. They were hiding something big, and I was about to dig it up with both hands. I'll admit, walking into that clubhouse felt like walking into a country club that married a tech startup and divorced common sense. Thanks to Steve, I had a solid cover story. Mark Patterson, mild-mannered software engineer from Asheville, looking to escape city life for something quieter. If by quieter I meant HOA tyranny disguised as community standards. The moment we stepped inside, I was hit with enough cologne and Colby Jack cheese cubes to start a revolution. The place was dripping in pretension. I whispered to Steve, "They've got more marble than morality," and he nearly choked on his Pinot. Barbara was already holding court in the center of the room like a dictator at a ribbon cutting. Her daughter, Jessica, all sharp heels and sleeker PowerPoint slides, stood ready at the projector. This wasn't a meeting, it was a coronation. The moment the screen lit up, I knew I was in trouble. Slide after slide showed the Lakeside Estates expansion plan, and by slide 3 I saw it, my cabin, or what used to be my cabin. Now it was labeled Wellness Pavilion A, flanked by 2 Serenity cabins and something called the Gratitude Lawn. I nearly burst out laughing. They had paved over my family's fireplace and turned it into a spot for goat yoga. My grandfather's workshop? Apparently, that was now the Essential Oils Lounge. This wasn't just erasure, it was architectural identity theft. There it was, I thought, my legacy, turned into a spa with eucalyptus towels and a quiet breathing zone. They didn't want me to comply, they wanted me to vanish. As the lights came back up, the wine got refilled and the whispers got lower. I lingered near the bar where Barbara and Marcus Thompson, the same councilman whose name was on the permit approvals, clinked glasses with enough smugness to sink a pontoon boat. "The Peterson situation is being handled," Barbara said with the kind of smug grin you only get after stealing Christmas. "Judge Williams will push it through next week. Jessica breaks ground before the first frost." Marcus nodded nervously. "You sure about the ownership? I heard he's digging." Barbara laughed, the kind of dry chuckle that flakes the paint off your soul. "Please! Ancient history. The board signed off. The town signed off. Who's going to challenge us? Mike Flowerbox Peterson?" They both laughed. I didn't. I slipped down the side hallway toward the admin offices, moving with all the grace of a man filled with adrenaline, spite, and cheese cubes. I found the HOA records door. Locked, of course, but let's just say all that cabin repair work had taught me how to pop a cheap door latch faster than Barbara could recite a bylaw. Inside, it was paper heaven. File drawers, folders, binders, a dusty desktop still running Windows XP. I snapped pictures of anything that looked important, legal memos, redrawn zoning lines, board minutes talking about non-conforming structures like they were termites. Then I found it, a manila folder labeled Peterson Strategy. Inside, a timeline for site reclamation, notes about fast-tracking eviction and emails to the town planning department with phrases like pre-clearance requested under HOA directive. This wasn't paperwork. This was a blueprint for steamrolling an entire legacy. That's when I heard footsteps. Voices. I didn't even have time to panic properly. I yanked open a utility closet and crammed myself inside, wedging between a mop bucket and a box of HOA-branded tote bags. Through the slats, I saw Barbara and Marcus walk in. "Once the Peterson eyesore is cleared," she was saying, "construction starts Monday. The permits are backdated. The inspector's on our side." Marcus sounded less sure. "He's not backing down. What if he takes it public?" Barbara's voice turned ice cold. "Then we make it inconvenient. That cabin's got old wiring, a wood stove, no updated fire prevention. Accidents happen." My breath caught. I'd expected legal games. I hadn't expected veiled threats of arson. This just became life or death for a chimney, I thought. I stayed frozen in that closet, every muscle tensed, realizing that this wasn't about flower boxes or siding codes. They were willing to burn it down to get what they wanted, and they didn't know I was holding the match that would set them on fire. Saturday night came in like a thief, quiet, tense, and heavy, with the kind of silence that makes your skin itch. I was in the cabin reviewing the photos I'd taken inside the HOA's records room when my phone buzzed. A motion alert from one of the new security cameras I'd just installed. I opened the feed and froze. Two figures, both wearing black hoodies and carrying red gasoline cans, were creeping up the gravel path like they were late to a bonfire no one was invited to. One of them paused and pointed toward the base of the chimney. The other started pouring gas in a wide arc around the foundation. My heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't vandalism. This was sabotage. They weren't just trying to burn a building. They were trying to erase 6 decades of memory, sweat, and family history in one oily blaze. I hit record, saved the footage to the cloud, and called the police with fingers so tight I could have cracked the screen. Officer Dave Miller showed up in less than 10 minutes. We'd played football together in high school. He was the quarterback. I was the kid who ran the scoreboard. He looked at the video and exhaled through his teeth. "That's Tim Scott. Does odd jobs around the HOA. And that's probably his cousin Rob. They think ski masks make them invisible." They hadn't lit the match yet. Something must scare them off. Maybe the camera blinked, maybe the wind shifted. Either way, they'd left in a hurry. Dave called in backup to sweep the area while I forwarded him the footage. "Mike," he said, real serious now, "this isn't just HOA nonsense anymore. This is attempted arson. They came here to erase you." I nodded, "And I've got a courtroom in 72 hours, so they better hope I'm still around to testify." First thing Sunday morning, I was in Sam's office, spreading everything we had like a legal buffet. Photos, deeds, letters, time-stamped footage, and that little flaming cherry on top, the arson attempt. Sam looked at the pile and nodded like a man who just saw checkmate 3 moves ahead. "We're filing an emergency injunction and counter-petition. We'll get the demolition paused and bring this mess to court." He was already dialing the courthouse. Meanwhile, I called Tom at the records office. "Tom, I need every permit, every zoning request, every piece of paper that's ever touched the words Lakeside Estates." He didn't even hesitate. "I'll come in today. I've had enough of Barbara's nonsense too." We were moving fast now, not just reacting, but pushing forward. Every second mattered. Every document was a nail in their argument's coffin. The weight of history was finally on our side. By noon, the town's favorite journalist, Rachel Newman, had the teaser up. HOA land grab? Lakeside Estates faces fraud accusations? It was short, sharp, and just cryptic enough to blow the lid off without giving away the ending. People started talking. Facebook moms, fishing buddies, guys at the gas station who hadn't cared about anything but beer prices suddenly had opinions about property lines and clubhouse ethics. That article spread faster than barbecue rumors in a small town. And it wasn't just curiosity, it was outrage. Everyone had a Barbara story. Late fees for leaving a cooler outside, fines for unapproved garden gnomes. The empire of HOA absurdity was starting to crack. And through the cracks came something I hadn't expected. Support. Of course, Barbara didn't stay quiet for long. By dinner time, she showed up on my porch wearing a coat too expensive for this town and a smile too fake for daylight, flanked by Linda and some guy in a charcoal suit who looked like he did legal work by the hour and moral work never. "Mr. Peterson," she said, sweet like poison, "we'd like to resolve this peacefully." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You brought gasoline to a cabin built by love, and now you want peace." Her smile tightened. "Let's not get dramatic. We're prepared to offer you fair market value for the structure and surrounding lot." I laughed. Loud. Real. "Market value? For the cabin and the land under your multi-million-dollar clubhouse?" I let the silence stretch until her lawyer started to fidget. "Try $5 million, and that's me being generous." Barbara's face fell like a chandelier from a rotten beam. "5? Are you out of your mind?" "Maybe," I said, "but I still own your yoga wing." After she stormed off muttering legal threats she couldn't afford and moral ones she couldn't back up, I met Sam at his place to finalize the packet for court. He handed me the folder with the care of a man passing a torch. "This has everything we need. You walk in, you don't blink, we've got truth, they've got a napkin drawing and forged signatures." I took it and nodded. "Let's end this." Later that night I got another alert, this time not from the cabin, but from my phone. Rachel's article had gone viral, shared over 15,000 times in 6 hours. David VHO Lyeth, someone had tagged it. The town was watching. The country was watching. No more hiding. No more threats behind locked doors. Monday morning, we walk into that courtroom with facts, history, and a full-blown audience. I wasn't just fighting for a cabin anymore. I was fighting for every quiet corner of America that had ever been steamrolled by a rule book and a power trip, and I planned to win with a pen, a deed, and the kind of justice you can't bulldoze. The courthouse buzzed like a beehive on espresso. Monday morning came with a bright sky and a line of cars outside the county building longer than the HOA bylaws, Barbara loved to quote. Inside, reporters hovered near the hallways, residents whispered like it was the trial of the century, and I, armed with a folder full of truth and the calm of a man with nothing left to lose, took my seat beside Uncle Sam. Judge Patricia Williams entered with her signature glasses perched low and a stare that could flatten concrete. "This is highly irregular," she announced, scanning the documents in front of her. "We have an eviction order requested by Lakeside Estates HOA and an emergency injunction filed by Mr. Michael Peterson. I will hear arguments briefly." Barbara's lawyer stood first, all smugness and shiny shoes. "Your Honor, Mr. Peterson's structure clearly violates multiple HOA regulations. His land now falls within our jurisdiction and we've followed proper notice procedure." Then it was Sam's turn. He stood, slow, deliberate. "Your Honor, we intend to prove that not only is Mr. Peterson's cabin excluded from the HOA, but that this eviction request is built on a foundation of fraud, and we have the original deed to prove it." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Let me see it." I handed it over. She read it silently, then she said with a voice dry as sandpaper, "Well, I'll be. Turns out ghosts can testify, if their handwriting is noticeable." The courtroom air shifted. Barbara leaned forward, eyes twitching like she'd spotted the invoice for her own downfall. Her attorney tried to recover. "We also have a signed agreement from 1995 showing Mr. Peterson's grandfather voluntarily added the property to the HOA." He handed it up with the flair of a magician about to reveal a rabbit. Judge Williams squinted at it. "Richard Peterson? Signed this in 1995? Sam didn't flinch. "Yes, Your Honor. One small issue. Richard Peterson died in 1992. That was it. That was the moment the courtroom turned. It started with a single gasp, then a murmur, then a wave of whispered "holy shits" rippling from the benches. Even the bailiff let out a low whistle. The judge flipped the paper back onto the bench like it was radioactive. "You're telling me someone submitted a forged document into my court?" Barbara's attorney stuttered something about being misled, glancing at her like she might spontaneously combust. The judge turned her attention directly to Barbara. "Mrs. Wilson, did you knowingly submit false information to this court?" Barbara's mouth opened, but her voice took a lunch break. I was advised. The judge didn't wait. This proceeding is on hold for a 48-hour forensic review. In the meantime, the eviction order is stayed. No action is to be taken on Mr. Peterson's property. I should have felt relief, but Sam leaned over and whispered, "We're not done. Drop the next bomb." I stood up, hands slightly shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to land. "Your Honor, in addition to the forged documents, we have reason to believe the Lakeside Estates HOA has constructed its clubhouse and pool on land it does not own. Land deeded to Richard Peterson in 1948 and inherited by me," the judge blinked. "You're claiming the HOA's clubhouse sits on your land?" I nodded. Sam passed her the maps, the survey markers, the construction permits. She reviewed them in silence as the tension in the room coiled tighter. "According to these documents," she finally said, "approximately 58% of the clubhouse and over 70% of the pool lie on Mr. Peterson's property." The room went full soap opera. Gasps, dropped jaws, hands clutching pearls that had been passed down since the Reagan administration. Barbara looked like someone had kicked her mortgage in the teeth. Her lawyer started sweating through his suit. The judge called for order. Then she looked straight at me. "Mr. Peterson, as the rightful landowner, you are entitled to remedies. What are you seeking?" I didn't expect that moment, but I knew what I had to say. I stood tall. "Your Honor, I don't want to destroy the clubhouse or punish residents who didn't know, but I do want change. I propose this. I will sell the land back to the HOA, not to the current board, but to a reformed HOA with new bylaws and elected leadership. The sale price will be $1 million, significantly below market, and every cent will go to the Richard Peterson Memorial Scholarship Fund for local students." I paused and turned to the audience. "In return, I ask 3 things. My cabin remains untouched, the current HOA board resigns, and a full audit is conducted of HOA finances." The judge studied me, then she nodded. "A generous and reasonable proposal." Barbara was less composed. "This is outrageous!" she shouted, launching to her feet. "You can't take our clubhouse!" The judge stared her down like a hawk eyeing a squirrel. "Mrs. Wilson, you submitted forged documents to this court, are implicated in potential land theft, and have been accused of orchestrating intimidation tactics. I suggest you reconsider your tone." Her lawyer practically tackled her back into her chair. The gavel came down. "All parties will have 30 days to negotiate. The current HOA board is hereby suspended from all financial decisions. Court is adjourned." As the room emptied, reporters swarmed, residents cheered, and Steve clapped me on the back like I'd just won the Super Bowl. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. I stood by the courtroom doors, watching Barbara being ushered away, her empire crumbling behind her like a bad drywall job. Sam leaned in. "You didn't win today," he said, smiling. "You just reminded them that truth has a longer fuse. And they finally heard the bang." I nodded. "Because I didn't come for war. I came for justice. And justice, it turns out, is patient, but punctual." The snow came late that winter, thick and quiet, like the world itself had decided to hush for a moment. Silver Lake froze into glass, and with it the noise of lawsuits, demolition threats, and gas can diplomacy finally fell silent. The cabin, my cabin, stood stronger than ever thanks to a small army of neighbors and volunteers who had, over time, stopped seeing it as an eyesore and started seeing it as what it always was. History. Steve Rogers and Elaine Cooper, the new president and vice president of Lakeside Estates, didn't just clean house. They rewrote the entire book. Under their leadership, the HOA transformed from a tyranny of taste into a community council with actual soul. They brought in term limits, financial transparency, and, get this, voluntary participation. That's right, voluntary. No more forced fines for mailbox heights or sanctioned tulip colors. And the cabin? It got a new cedar roof, rewired electrics, and insulation that didn't date back to Nixon. But what mattered most wasn't what we built back. It was what we didn't tear down. Jessica Wilson surprised everyone, especially me. She reached out in the softest way, an email titled simply, I'd like to help. At first I braced for damage control or reputation rehab, but what I got was humility. She told me she had no idea her mother had gone that far, and when she saw the land deeds and fire footage, she cried. Not performative tears, real ones. I just wanted to design beautiful things, she said. I didn't realize I was sketching over someone else's roots, so we met cautiously and talked about the balance between legacy and progress. Over time, she helped me redesign the cabin in a way that preserved the bones but made it livable year-round. She even sourced reclaimed wood for a new porch swing, almost identical to the one Grandpa carved. And in a twist no one could have predicted, the woman meant to erase my history helped anchor it more firmly than ever. The scholarship fund took off faster than I expected. What started as a courtroom mic drop, the $1 million 0-cents land deal, became something deeper. We named it the Richard Peterson Memorial Scholarship, aimed at students pursuing trades, public service, and community planning. We wanted to invest not just in education, but in builders, the kind of people who nail foundations, not just frame blueprints. Within months, 10 scholarships were awarded, 5 for college, 5 for apprenticeships, a balance Grandpa would have loved. I sat in on the interviews and met kids who reminded me of him, quiet, capable, humble, and sharp as tacks. These weren't trust fund teens chasing status. They were grinders, bricklayers, plumbers, coders with sawdust on their jeans. I felt like we were planting something real in soil that had been ignored for too long. For once, the land was giving back in a new way, and this time it wasn't about profit margins. It was about purpose. Barbara Wilson, once the face of fear in this town, became something else entirely. Forgettable. After the court ruling, she fought the charges for a while, then took a plea deal for document fraud and community sabotage, 3 years probation, a hefty fine, and court-ordered community service. Irony had a good sense of humor. Her first assignment was helping to repaint benches at the very park she once tried to fence off. I passed her once on Main Street. She was sitting outside a coffee shop, alone, staring into a paper cup like it might tell her who she used to be. People walked by without flinching. The same people who once bowed to her HOA sermons now acted like she was part of the sidewalk. Faded, neutral, unnoteworthy. She was once a thunderstorm. Now she was just fog nobody walked into. 1 year later, I sat on my porch with a hot cup of coffee and the kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention. It just is. The lake shimmered under the early spring sun. Loons paddled across the thawing water, and the wind stirred the trees like an old friend dusting off memories. Steve jogged by, waved, and hollered something about a barbecue at the now community-run clubhouse. I nodded. I'd go, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. That's what community is when it's real. Not control, not conformity, just neighbors showing up for each other. I looked at the cabin, its weathered siding, fresh roof, and that stubborn chimney still standing proud. Grandpa used to say, "You don't carve legacy with rules. You carve it with respect." I finally understood. This wasn't just about land. It was about protecting the space where decency lives. So I sat back, exhaled, and smiled. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. It doesn't swing a hammer or wave a flag. Sometimes it just parks itself on a porch, sips its coffee, and waits, knowing full well it's not going anywhere. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.